Hello, Giants fans. Welcome to Giants Baseball 101. I'm Gabe Vaughn, your host. The Giants lost to the Braves 3-1 today. And after yesterday, and the point I made that's a really good start to the month of July, I'm not sure if I'm coming on tonight and anybody's thinking that I'm going to be saying that now is the time to panic. And I'll just say right here, I'm not, and no, I don't think that it's time to panic yet, even though this series is evened up, Giants and Braves. And I also don't think it's a time to lose sight of the bigger picture. It was just a tough one where the bats couldn't get going against Chris Sale, who, as we know, has been a long time star pitcher now in the Braves organization. He was formerly with the Red Sox. He was actually a pretty big part of their 2018 World Series championship in which they beat the Dodgers, but he pitched against the Giants today, and it was Jordan Hicks going for the Giants, and he allowed 3 runs over 5 innings. And Sean Jelly had to mop it up by pitching the final couple innings of the game. So, nothing today for the Giants, but, you know, I do want to just say here in respect to what we're looking at, the trade deadline, I'm sure we all know that people are talking about the Giants, but I think, you know, it might be a surprise if you consistently pay attention to what is really being said about them and what that in fact means. So there's this article, and I do sometimes like to reference these external sources that come together, that they put together either opinions or information, just whatever's relevant. This one was from Around the Foghorn by Jeff Young, and he's making a speculation that, so what if the Giants decided to sell this year? And basically he brings up the possibility that the Giants could actually trade closer Camilo Doval if they were to be sellers at this year's trade deadline. And it's something I'd recommend reading. It's on Around the Foghorn by Jeff Young, and it references the possibility of the Giants being sellers on July 30th. What if they trade Camilo Doval, who's going to be heading into his first year of arbitration? Is that a possibility? And I mean, Jeff Young admits it's probably not going to happen, but he's just saying, like, you never know, essentially. Like, it could, due to the fact that he'd bring in quite a few prospects, even though he's kind of having a rough year. Now, what Young also referenced was Jon Heyman, and how, you know, Heyman is saying the Giants will not be sellers. Or at least they're far from being sellers. That's what Jon Heyman said. And he's right. They are far from being sellers. And they're not going to be sellers. So I think in that sense, it's pretty clear to me they won't be sellers. They're probably, the point of this was not to get everybody worried that Camilo Doval could be getting shipped. But what's the interesting thing here? There was another time, and it wasn't that long ago, when there was talk about trading Camilo Doval. There was another time. That was back in 2022. It was not because the Giants were planning to sell. It was before their big, huge losing streak, when they were planning to be buyers at that trade deadline 2 years ago. There was talk about trading Camilo Doval as part of a win now move. And the guy they would have got in that deadline was Juan Soto. They were serious contenders for Soto until you know what. Now, we're hearing the subject of a Doval trade brought up again in the context of the Giants being sellers. And it's been a space of 2 years. Of course, a lot's different now. He's going to be eligible for arbitration next year. I already mentioned that. But this is where we're hearing that brought up again. If they were sellers this year, that could happen. Now, are they going to be sellers? I'm pretty sure they are not. And I think just from what we've seen, though, in recent Giants history, what does that actually tell you? They're not going to be sellers. Does that mean we should just be all happy and know that everything's going to be okay? Well, no, and I keep going back to this, but last year, who did they trade for? AJ Pollock and Mark Matthias. These guys, what was that trade anyway? It was a last minute move because they had to do something, or else, the reaction from fans would be so bad. It would just, they had to do something because that was their whole goal at the trade deadline leading up to that point. But that trade, the ridiculous trade they made last year, there's no way that was planned weeks in advance. Even if you're looking at the 1 year anniversary of today, was it planned that far back? I don't think so. At the last minute, because they couldn't execute the real plan that they had to just put all that together and be doing something. I don't think that the firing of manager Gabe Kapler 3 games short of the end of the season was planned a long time in advance where you've got time to think rationally about stuff either, but that is a different discussion. I think it's beyond the scope of today and the issue that we're dealing with today. And we know that the Giants are on the fringe and that they're hovering around 500, and I would agree with Jon Heyman that there really is no genuine way that they could be sellers. So the point here is that even though you're hearing some of this extreme talk of things that could just go really bad one way, that's not the stuff to pay attention to, even though it's interesting because, like I pointed out, it draws on stuff that was talked about in recent years for different reasons. But I don't think those are the issues that should scare us, like something we've never seen. Oh, they're going to trade Camilo Doval, they're going to, whatever other name they brought up that you really, that's not what should scare us, what we haven't seen yet and what we haven't experienced. The only thing that should scare us, don't read those articles and be scared. I think you should read it. It's an interesting perspective. Don't read it and be scared. If you're going to be scared by something, be scared by what we've seen in the past, what you have experienced. The Giants doing nothing, it neither prepares for their future nor helps them to contend. And if they just went for it one of these years, it's gonna just think about this. Is 2021 gonna happen again? Well, I hope it does someday, but unfortunately there's no realistic way to predict it in the near future. Remember how loaded the Dodgers are. 2021 was that great year. Are we just waiting for a thing like that to happen again? These types of years where you're fringe contenders, you gotta get back into it is more realistically just what we could expect to see. And that's why they have to decide to make a run for it. So on one hand, don't be scared on one extreme that there's gonna be some fire sale, that there's not. But at the other hand, just because Jon Heyman points out something that's probably true, they're not gonna be sellers. Don't let that get your hopes up either, just knowing what this team has done in the past. But they're still in it now. I mean, they really are still in it. ideally the month of July will be the best month that they've had yet, but I mean, either way, we can say the Giants are still in this, and it's time to do something, time to go for it on July 30th. And again, with prospects like the prospects that I would agree they should hold on to, like Marco Luciano, it's only because he has years left. If he were 3 years older, I'd probably say let him go if necessary to get somebody. But I'm talking about, and if he doesn't perform in the next couple of years, I might change my stance on this. But we're talking about getting a future and just getting something now with guys who can come kind of in their prime, or at least able to perform and help the Giants. If they have to trade somebody to get that going, then it's kind of what they have to do, because remember, 2024, it was the future based on the perspective of a few years ago that really doesn't seem that long ago, at least not to me. Thank you for watching. This has been Giants Baseball 101. Please subscribe if you haven't. Also, please leave your questions and comments. You know where to do it. I'll see you next time on Giants Baseball 101.